Okay, we will continue. The next topic is sustainable development. What is sustainable development? It is nothing but development and use of resources without compromising the ability of the future generation to do so. Did you get that? Development and use of resources without compromising the ability of the future generation to do so. Meaning to say, the resources are meant not just for us, the present human beings, the present generation. The generations to come should be able to use the resources that we are using. Therefore, the sustainable development definition will tell you that the resources that you enjoy now belongs to the future generation also. This is the resources that you enjoy now are inherited from the previous generation. You are the custodian now, the caretaker now. You must pass it on to the next generation. It actually advises us or invites us not to use resources indiscriminately. Use only what you need and hand over the resource to the next generation. That is called sustainable development. I repeat, use and development of resources in a way that will not compromise the ability of the future generation to do so. That is a sustainable development. In fact, all the discussions around sustainable development and preservation of environment are a result of many of the discussions of the 19th century. Since Industrial Revolution, we have been using the resources unwisely. There was a mass exploitation of the resources. Therefore, the world began to see or experience the effect of unwise use of the resources. Therefore, we said we have to put an end to the way we use the resources now. And then the world community came with a new concept called sustainable development. And there, the first ever meet on sustainable development or the preservation of nature was held in 1992 in Brazil in a place called Rio de Janeiro. Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit 1992. This is the first summit of this kind in the world. It was attended by about 100 nations. The summit was attended by about 100 nations, and of course, India was one of the participants of this of this summit. It was conducted in Brazil, and in this summit, they discussed various concerns of the nature of preserving the resources for the future generation, about sustainable development, and so on. And then they produced a document called Agenda 21. Agenda 21. Now, Agenda 21 aims to invite all the nations and all the people what the action plan or what to do next in order to preserve the environment for the future generation, in order to sustain the earth as it is now. Now, if the danger is if the present movement or the current momentum of exploitation of resources continued, there will come a time when life on earth won't be possible, because you and me are experiencing the effects of global warming. Maybe it is very hot right now, very hot right now. Maybe 20 years back or 30 years back, it was not the case. When I was a child, we didn't have fans at home. It was way back in 1990s. The fan was not a requirement because the atmosphere was comparatively cooler. But then year by year, the temperature of the universe is increasing, and this is only because of the unwise actions of the human beings. So Agenda 21 is a document that is rooted in the basic principle: think globally, act locally. Did you get that? Think globally, act locally. We discuss about global warming. We discuss about preserving the environment. We discuss about taking care of the resources. We have a lot of discussions. We have everything here in the head. But the real question is, what are you doing to preserve the nature? What is your contribution? Are you doing anything to preserve the nature? Are you doing anything to bring down the temperature? This is the philosophy of saying, think globally and act locally. So, we will discuss, we will have more discussion about Agenda 21 in the classrooms. Now you just get the definition only, Agenda 21. Another important thing, why is it named 21, Agenda 21? Because the action plan given in Agenda 21 are to be completed by 2021. That is next year. This year is 2020. By next year, we were supposed to complete or fulfill the promises made in Brazil in the first ever Earth Summit. As you know, we are nowhere near the promise we made then. So Agenda 21. 21 means the promises to be fulfilled by 2021. When you read newspapers or listen to TV news or any other program on the topic sustainable development, the new term is Sustainable Development Goals or SD goals. The SD goals is SD goals 2030, meaning to say by 2030 at least we should be able to bring down the temperature of the earth by 2 degrees Celsius. We'll have more of such discussions in the classroom once you come back to school after the reopening. The next segment and the last segment in this is resource planning. You know, we discussed a lot about the richness of resources in India. We said India is one of the countries blessed with a lot of natural resources. This is the reason, or this is one of the reasons why we were colonized by the British. The British did not come to India just to make us civilized or to give us education, to give us the railway, to give us the communication systems and so on. They were tempted by the huge deposit of natural resources in our country. Now, having a resource is not enough. We should be able to exploit that for the benefit of everyone. That is what we discuss under resource planning. So we say when you study geography or even history, you know that every part of India is not the same. For example, there is a lot of difference from state to state. You go to the north, to the northeast, to south, to west, to northwest. The whole of India is a culturally diverse, rich nation. For example, it is true in the case of resources also. For example, in Jharkhand, MP, Chhattisgarh, in those states, we have a rich deposit of minerals and coal. Rich deposit of minerals and coals. In Arunachal Pradesh, there is a rich deposit of water resources. Or Rajasthan is very famous for a huge or immense resource deposit of or availability of solar and wind energy. But Rajasthan suffers from water. Or Arunachal Pradesh doesn't have as much wind and solar energy as Rajasthan. So you know that resources are distributed unequally. Now the real challenge of our government is to plan and exploit the resources so that the whole of the nation may be benefited. Now another trouble of having rich resource, especially in the states of Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh and so on, is Naxalism. Naxalism is actually a byproduct of a huge deposit of resources, because the governments have given huge area or big area of land and forest to a few companies, and these companies exploit the resources and take all the benefits to themselves. For example, hectares of land in Jharkhand are given to a few companies, and all the Adivasis and indigenous people of those areas are drawn out. These forests were the home of the Adivasis for centuries, and they were driven out from those forests, and the forests were given to a few individuals for the purpose of mining and gold mining. And as a result, we have a Naxalism. So the planning of the exploitation of resources is one of the challenges of the government. The next one is resource planning in India. Resource planning in India. We can say that the resource planning in India started with the British. It started with the British. As I said in my previous some time back, that the Britishers came to India because they were tempted by the deposit of resources. And when you plan resources in India, there are a few things to be kept in mind. The first one is identification and inventory of resources. That is, the government has to identify and take an inventory of resources. Where is it available, how much is it available, and the technology needed, whether it could be tapped to benefit the citizens of our nation, or can we export it to get for the purpose of industry and so on. And next one is evolving a planning structure. Now, having a deposit of resource alone is not enough. We should have a clear-cut plan. What are we going to do with that, and who is going to do that, and how is it going to benefit the citizens of our nation? And we say availability of resources is a necessary condition for the development of any region. This is very important. Availability of resources is very necessary for the development of a region. For example, the coastal areas are very much dependent on fisheries, or the places like Dubai and the UAE or Hong Kong, Thailand. These places are very much dependent on tourism. You see that availability of resources having an effect on the development of a place. The other way also right. For example, there are places with no resource, but then they are extremely developed. For example, Mumbai. If you take the example of Mumbai, Mumbai is a place with very less natural resources, except for a sea. Very less natural resource. Or take the example of Delhi. Very less natural resources, but these are all places much developed. So, although we say that the availability of resources is necessary for the development of a region, there are also cases where availability of resources is not required for the development. Take the example of Jharkhand or Chhattisgarh, for example. These are places with a huge deposit of resources, but they are not developed. So these are complex issues. Now, for time being, you understand that availability of resources is needed for the development of a nation. The next paragraph there is talking about colonization. We already discussed that the Britishers came to India to exploit our natural resources, and they were exporting that to their country. They were exporting the raw material to British and bringing back the finished goods. For example, we had hectares of cotton. All the cotton were exported to the British. They made to Britain. They made the finished products and they were brought back to India. So India acted not only as a place of exploitation, but also as a market for the British goods. The last one there is about the conservation of resources. Now this is very important. Conservation of resources. This is the last segment we will be discussing today. Conservation. What's the meaning of conservation? It's about preserving. That you preserve the natural resources, or you save the natural resources from an indiscriminate use of it. Now, we began the class by saying a statement by Gandhi. There is enough resource to meet every man's need, but not his greed. If you are a greedy person, no amount of resource can satisfy your need. And what is the importance of a resource conservation? That is because we said this is the natural resources are the wealth of a nation, and overexploitation would lead to the destruction of the nation or of the place.